Uh, I'm Sarah Gimetti. I am the president of PMG. I want to welcome you to our final Lunch and Learn program of the year. I'd also like to thank our annual sponsors. They've been instrumental in helping us bring you these programs, even though we've had to switch to being digital and not in person. Our legacy sponsors, North Bay Business Journal. We want to really thank you for your continued support. We also have our annual sponsors, which is Sonoma Media Investments. You may know them as the Press Democrat, Sonoma Magazine, the North Bay Business Journal, among a few others. We also would like to thank Kevin, Rebecca, and their team at Amaturo Sonoma Media Group. You may know them as Froggy 92.9, The River 97.7, KSRO 1350, and K-Hits 104.9. And finally, our education sponsor, thank you, CoLab. Their co-working space is usually where we have our lunch and learns when we can meet in person, and we will be back there hopefully at some point next year. They have a great co-working space. If you haven't seen it, feel free to check it out, especially if you're looking for something different than working from home. And a little recap for members. We really would like you to sign in to the member portal. You can find a link on our website. It's also pmg.clubexpress.com. Take a look at your profile, update your information. That is also where you can find recordings from the Lunch and Learns that we've done virtually this year. There's 2 on there from May and last month, September, and this one will be up there within the next few days. You can update your information, your contact details, make sure you can renew your membership when it comes up for renewal and things like that. Keep in mind, if you're in an organization with a bigger marketing group or a marketing department, you can have a group membership, which reduces your fees if you have 3 or more people join PMG. If you have many more questions about that, feel free to reach out to us. We are always looking for companies that align with our mission to sponsor us. If you think your company would be a good fit, shoot us an email at info@pmgnorthbay.org. And our companies are, our events are our bread and butter of what we offer our membership. And we've been doing the best we can with going virtual. I know everyone is having a little bit of Zoom fatigue right now. Hopefully you find today's program really great. Some of our upcoming events in November, on November 10th, 12th, 17th, and 19th, we have a 4-day conference that we are in collaboration with Sonoma Media Investments. Tickets are currently $40 for the full 4-day conference, and we'll be covering things like brand management, web presence, digital marketing, and social media marketing. Each of those topics are their own individual day, and each day is from 8 until noon. And with PMG discount code PMGFriend, you can get your tickets for $25 instead of the full $40 fee. I'll drop the link to the tickets in the chat for you if you're interested in joining us for that conference. I think it's going to be a really great program. We have a wide variety of speakers on a lot of topics, and I think it'll be really great to help you set the foundation as you're planning for 2021, and hopefully we can get back to a little bit more of a normal marketing and business strategy next year. Now, for the rules of the program for today, please use the Q&A to submit your questions. We also, if you want to ask Bianca a question or have a dialogue with her directly, feel free to put that in the Q&A. Say, hey, I want to ask Bianca the question directly, and I'll be able to bring you onto the program. We are not monitoring raise your hand, so please don't use that. And don't put questions in the chat. Make sure you put it in the actual Q&A box so that I see it and I can interact with Bianca or bring you on if needed. In the chat, make sure you change it to sending it to all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your conversation back and forth with each other. Let's see. Now, I think that covers up our housekeeping. And so now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Bianca. With over 15 years of experience, Bianca Broos brings an innovative and collaborative approach to real estate. As a business and branding strategist, she supports teams in marketing and branding and creating a unique customer experience. Bianca believes that everyone has a powerful story to tell and a purpose to fulfill. She powerfully engages audiences of all sizes. She has been called motivating, entertaining, dynamic, and holds essential down-to-earth information that both educates and empowers. Bianca supports her audience in becoming who they are, activating their potential, and empowering them to move forward with full confidence. Please help me welcome Bianca.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. It's interesting, you know, as professionals, most of us write our own bios, and then you write your bio and then you have to listen to it. And you're like, wow, I really made myself sound really wonderful there. So I really appreciate your time today. I realize that your time is valuable. I did not realize that this was your last presentation of the year. So I always think that people save the best for last. So I hope that we don't disappoint here. At the very minimum, my hope is that we would have a conversation together.
Pause real quick. We are getting an echo from you, or at least I am.
Okay. Are you still getting that echo?
I am not.
Okay, awesome, good. So great, thank you. So what we're going to discuss today is how we are able to navigate through crisis and shifting short-term changes into a long-term strategy. If 2020 has taught us really anything, it is that we are having to navigate crisis like we've never had to before. It's been a really challenging year in business, in our personal lives, globally, emotionally. And I think this is one of those years where we're all going through the same thing together, but we're having an individual experience. And so it's really important for us to give ourselves a ton of room to learn from our own process and learn through what these crises and these challenges are really allowing us to learn from. We have encountered new phenomenon that we have never experienced before. And it's not the pandemic I'm talking about. I'm talking about Zoom fatigue that has been mentioned, I think, twice today already in this conversation. A loss of connection, bracing for the next thing, who feels like you're just about done with one thing and you're getting ready to go into that next thing, and you're absolutely feeling this tension almost at a inner core soul level. The boundaries have been blurred as well, professionally and personally. You're working from home. You're also having your family in your space if you have a family. You are working, but also making snacks. You are taking personal calls and professional calls. Having those lines blurred is really challenging for us, knowing that we have that time to travel to work. For many of us, that was the time that we had to ourselves in our cars, even if it was just a 7-minute commute. Being able to get through that was really valuable time for us. So today, I want you to think about this. It's tough for two reasons for me. I don't see your faces, and I wish I could see your faces. But also, I want to see your interacting. So please use the chat. Please ask those questions. Interrupt away, because this is supposed to be a conversation with one another. So one of the questions that I think about when I think about navigating crisis is, what are the things that you are currently experiencing and struggling with? What stresses have come up? What feelings are you struggling with? And what is your learning curve in this? Sarah mentioned that I am a business and branding strategist, and that is what I focus on. I really want people to experience success, and success is something that you define for yourself. Well, in crisis, what our attention is on is the crisis. We are not giving ourselves the space, and we don't have the bandwidth to think about what success might look like. So in this changing time, I wanted to share a little bit of what some of the things are that we are really dealing with. Some statistics that would help us see that perhaps we're not alone in this. So unfortunately, this number is one that will rise continually, but 33% of the workforce at the moment in the United States is unemployed, and that is projected to rise. 42% of the workforce is working from home, that blurred lines conversation, and 53% of adults in the US are reported that their mental health has been impacted negatively by the worries and the stresses in this time. The reason I'm sharing this, this statistics with you is because I think that knowing that we are not alone somehow comforts us in a way that we know if we were to get through this, it'll be together. And so that I already gave you that imperative word that navigating crisis is about getting through it. So what does this mean for us in terms of our jobs as marketers? So whether you own your own business or you are an employee, I want you to know that I very much see you as an entrepreneur. Long gone are the days where we start a job in our late teens or early 20s and then just live out our long, stable careers at that job. We don't have those experiences. Those experiences are far and few between. So even if you are an employee, I want you to think of yourself as an entrepreneur, somebody who is actively engaged in their career, who is responsible for their own work, who is driven and motivated to grow and takes responsibility for that path for themselves. And in that way, we have, as marketers, as communicators, as people who are actively engaged in our business, we have never been more relatable in this crisis, in navigating these waters and this territory. Why? Because, like I mentioned to you before, even though this is a conversation we're all dealing with together, our experience is individualized. So your story and your personal experience is unique and offers a perspective as we're navigating through this that is valuable and actually beneficial to your own definition of success. And that is really what I want you to think about as you're thinking of how you can use these short-term changes that feel like long-term things, but they're short-term changes to create a long-term strategy.
Bianca, how do you,
yes.
How do you feel or think, since, as it stands right now, this seems to be unending. There doesn't seem to be a clear path to getting back to somewhat normal times. How do you suggest a business owner, as they're navigating this, also plan for the whole year when it feels so unknown for them? And for marketers, I know we're really good at shifting when things change and altering a plan, but a business owner, it's a lot. I feel like it's a lot harder for them to pivot on a dime. I hate using the word pivot now.
Yes. I know the word pivot has become a trigger word. That's a really great question. So I think that not knowing when things are going to end puts us in this place of hurry up and wait. And I think that not having a clear understanding of when things are going to be different, while at the same time experiencing daily, dramatic, constant change, would have you feel paralyzed, right? That's a very normal reaction. I think it's important to normalize how you feel and how you are, what you think is available or not available to you. But it's really important, first and foremost, to keep perspective. You and I both know that in any other context, this is crisis or difficulty is not a permanent condition. And so when you're in the middle of that, you can't recall that easily. But it's important to recall that to your mind if at all possible. That's first and foremost. And the other thing that I think is really important is to pay attention to the things you're learning. I can share a little bit with you all that one of the reasons why I feel so strongly really personally feel strongly about this being a learning opportunity for all of us, and that we're going to come out of this better, is because I think that I think back to my own personal experience with crisis. I grew up in a communist country. I went through civil war, the fall of the wall. And I remember that feeling of, this is never going to end. My life is never going to be normal. I'm never going to have what I read in books and here are the people having, what my family and I imagined for myself. And that just isn't true, right? That was a very difficult time, and it has a beginning and an end. And just because you don't see the end of the tunnel doesn't mean the end isn't there.
That's a really great point, that, with we get so dialed into what's going on right now, and the paralysis, where this will end at some point, and just kind of plan for this being the status quo for a little while, maybe for, hopefully not for all of next year, but it's, most of the reports I'm seeing, it could be up to 2 or 3 years before we really get back to where things were. And so planning for just a different reality, but knowing that it's not going to be this bad forever.
Yeah. And that word status quo you used, there's a lot in there, right? And I think it's really important for us to recognize that and actually that's my next topic that I want to chat with you guys about. This is not our status quo, right? This probably is a real opportunity for us to look at what it is we can do better. And it's a massive lesson for us. And I'm not speaking, hyperbolically or and I'm not disregarding the things that are really, really, really challenging, right? It's not a Pollyanna approach. It's an optimistic approach, to be sure, but it's one to encourage us to look at what it is that we can learn from this, and what measurable and incremental steps that we can execute on going forward.
I think you're right. It's a great opportunity for businesses to look at their standard processes and how they've run their business. I think a lot of businesses got complacent in their marketing, in their business dealings, and things were working just fine. So why change anything? Let's just keep going.
Yeah,
it's a good opportunity to look at all that and saying, well, what were the things that maybe they weren't working so great, or they annoy you? It's a great opportunity to shift it and make it a better customer experience than you had before.
Yes, because, and this is the part, right? Don't assume that just because everybody's going through all of this, that we're all having the same experience. So your customer and your audience, I mean, long before you have a customer and a client, you have an audience member. Whether you know that you are that you have an audience member or not, whether you think of them as on social media, because we're all on social media, or your past clients or potential clients, those are your audience members for our context. They're all having very different experiences, and coming at a conversation through assumption is not the same thing as being empathetic and having compassion, right? We can show a lot of empathy in these times, but and I'm not suggesting you said this, but I'm just saying, don't make the assumption that we're all having the same experience, because we're not. So even saying things like challenging times, how are you pivoting? Even my favorite word that I've said at least a dozen times here today, crisis. Not everyone is experiencing crisis right now, and that's okay, because your own experience in this and your empathy with one another is what makes us, for lack of a better word, more relatable and more marketable, more relevant in the marketplace.
So how do you suggest that business owners change their mindset moving forward? And as we come into the end of 2020, they start looking at their budgets, they start looking at planning for 2021. How do they change their mindset to be a much more positive, I don't want to say rosy picture, but open-minded to moving into the next year that's going to be better than this year, and not quite as crazy, crisis, negative that we've experienced so far?
So when you're looking at at your plan ahead, one of the temptations is to say, well, 2020 proved itself to be a cluster, and those plans didn't work out. Why even bother planning? And to your point earlier, we don't know when this is going to end. What are we even planning for? Really important to sit down and set some parameters for success, definition of success, and to actively take action toward that. I want you to know that a strategy is a plan. If you look at the word strategy, you're creating a plan. I really want you to take it in one step further and think of a plan as, if, you know, all metaphors break down, but if you were to all think with me and take a piece of paper and just draw an arrow, right? You're drawing an arrow, and right here, this is your goal. And let's say that you know clearly what your goal is. And for the sake of this this example, we're going to say our goal is to reach out to more of our audience. So potential clients, past clients, and current clients, more of our audience. And so you draw this arrow. There's your strategy. Boom. You're good to go. Done. You nailed it. Except where we stop short as business owners, particularly during pressure times, is imagine that arrow, nothing flies straight, right? There's these ups and downs in business. You need tactics, you need markers. And so imagine this imaginary dotted line. Those are your tactics that go up and down around this arrow. You have highs and lows, right? Peaks and pits. And for each one of those, for each one of those situations, you want to be prepared with a tactic. And a tactic is an action. So one of the most important things when you start planning for 2021 is to acquaint yourself with the word strategy and with the word tactic. Those are very different things, and you need both. And so the mindset around strategy is what do you want to say yes to? Ask yourself what you want to be known for. And look back, if you are a business owner or if you are an employee, look back at what you've done really, really well. What are your clients saying about you? What does your past reviews look like? What are you doing really well? What are your strengths and skills that you want to carry forward? Look at what you've learned. You know, what has this year taught you? Were you caught, you know, on the couch with Dorito bags and eating Doritos and ice cream and just kind of feeling like the world's crashing in on you? Were you hustling hard and forgot to take care of yourself? What's your personal experience in 2020? What's your team's experience? And what measurable, marginal change can you make? And that's a whole lot of words to essentially say, your mindset is about knowing what you've done well, knowing where you can improve, choosing a goal, making it very specific, a straight arrow, that's your strategy, and then putting in that dotted line of tactics, small, measurable action you can take toward that one goal.
I know we've gone a little off on your outline. Yeah, we're
a little bit off. That's okay. And there's a question I also see. Did you see that question? Did we already cover this one?
The pressures.
How do you believe personal beliefs play into changing personal outlook?
Oh, I like that.
How do beliefs, i.e. personal beliefs, play into changing personal outlook? Ooh, that's a really great question. And oh gosh, I wish you guys could talk back because it's all about the talk back. Beliefs, that's an interesting word. So English is my second language. And so I often look up words before I prepare for a presentation. I did not look up the word belief. Now I know what it means, right? And that's how we usually use language. We think we know what words mean and we use them in that way. When I think of the word belief, I think about something that I am willing, that I have some emotional intelligence around, some experience around, and it's in personal belief around, you know, I personally believe that I'm a capable individual. Now, sometimes I don't feel like I am, but I believe that I am. Therefore, if I don't feel like I am, I remind myself of what I believe, and then I have to act accordingly. Like, not fake it till you make it, but act as if. And so with your question here, how does that play into changing personal outlook? I think our personal outlook is very much influenced by our circumstances. They're very much influenced by the things that are happening. And I can share tons of personal experience with you, professional experience with you around things that are happening, and you feel like this whole project is crashing down. We don't have to go through a global pandemic and an economic impact on this scale to experience crisis. Sometimes it's like, you hit delete on a 12-page contract that you just created, and you're just like, holy Moses, what, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen. And that's your personal crisis. The belief is to remind yourself of your capability, your strength, and go back to that space of certainty to change your outlook toward what you know to be sure. Now, here's why I'm saying that. And I told you at the beginning, I think belief has to do with emotional intelligence, which is built through experience. Tons of other ways that it's built, but one of those markers is your personal experience. Remind yourself the last time you went through something difficult. Remind yourself that you got through it, what you learned from it, how you were better and stronger and more skilled, more equipped to work through a particular challenge. That is an enormous asset to you. Use those resources, use that experience to change your outlook. I think that is what is really, really critical. So I hope I answered your question, but how you think about yourself is a huge part of how you can address your future, even though for all of us at all times, our future is unknown. So I'm going to jump back to the flow, and I really do love your questions. So keep them coming. Thank you, Sarah, for your questions. I really appreciate that. So I like you try to make sense of things, right? And it's really important for us to engage in that. In making sense of what is happening and how we can be better and progress further and draw that arrow with those lines and making those strategic and tactical decisions as we go. One more note on that: your strategy is less likely to change. Your tactics are changing to mirror the strategy. So keep that in mind if you would, and I'll say that again at some other point. So here's an equation that I came up with that I felt like really helps me remember what I'm going through and what my clients are going through. And when I think of you, even though I don't necessarily know you, but you're here taking the time, interacting and listening here, what could happen here? What is possible here? So we have pressures. Well, one of the things that happens in pressures is that the pressures, they invite the opportunity for us to be really creative, right? So you and I, we're creative people, and you don't have to be in a creative job to be creative. So if you think of the pressure that's happening, one of the things that pressure allows for is your creativity to come up. You have to think outside of the box. You have to think up ways to get even through the day. So anybody here who has kids who are homeschooled, also not a word I love, homeschooled, or anybody here who has to now work from home while also having a partner who works from home and kids who are on Zoom calls, right? All of that, it really forces your creativity. So pressure plus creativity equals possibility. So that is an equation that I think is really, really fun. It allows you to look at pressure as something that actually creates more possibility. So in pressure, allow yourself to become more creative. And that goes to that business planning, that's visioning for 2021, your mindset, thinking back into what has happened in your past that has possibly taught you and equipped you in some way for this present moment. So pressure plus creativity equals possibility. And this is a really important part for us because, and Sarah already alluded to this a little bit, during this time, one of the things that we've experienced, one of the pressures that are not really measured, they're not measured by, certainly not by many employers, certainly not by clients, and in general, this does not seem to be a very open conversation in our culture. And that is the pressure that we're experiencing on our mental health. So I have a couple of more statistics for you. If you've already heard these, don't tune out, hear them again, because behind every one of these numbers are actually real human beings. And I don't even know that these numbers are all that comprehensive, that there's not a higher number if everything, all things being equal, were considered. So CDC researchers surveyed a group of individuals to measure the effects of the pandemic and mental health. So 40% of surveyed adults said that they have developed new or worsening mental health conditions as a result of the current pressures. 40% of the people that were surveyed. 25% of the people surveyed cited anxiety, and 24% cited depression. One of the hardest aspects of mental health is that you feel like you're all alone in this, and that how you're feeling is pervasive, that this is going to stay this way because, like we already talked about, they're outside of us. There doesn't seem to be a lot of indicators to point to when this is going to be over. So with that tunnel metaphor, right, it is really that much more important that if you can think past the end of the tunnel, that you believe, you trust, from your past experience that this crisis, this pressure invites creativity and creates more possibility, that if you at all can think that, it is that much more important for you to actually vocalize that, actually act as if, because there's lots of people who can't, who just simply cannot. And I do think that it takes each other, and it takes a lot of, it takes everyone to speak honestly about where they're at and the possibilities that they see. So
how do you think, with keeping that in mind, because I know a lot of those mental health issues, they cover the different age brackets, the different demographics. So it's not hitting one more than the other, I don't believe. So with that in mind, how do marketers build better relationships with their audience or prospective audience while also being sensitive to and relatable to the fact that everyone is going through, or at least 40% are struggling with some sort of mental health problems, yet still trying to navigate their own lives and their own businesses? How do we as marketers and business owners kind of build the relationships while also not causing more harm?
Right. So this is, I'm literally just speaking to business owners and marketers. If you're a mental health professional, you're going to have very different understanding of this. So for me, if you know somebody who is struggling, do the best you can to support them, and to show empathy and understanding. On a broader spectrum of not necessarily, knowing, having personally experience with this, creating as a team lead or as a business owner for your team, creating space for that conversation is really important. And so that's deliberate space. And having that conversation and not trying to fix it, right? We're not in charge of fixing it, especially if you're business owners, because it's not our area of expertise. But as marketers, when we're talking to our audience, we have the opportunity to, again, the pressure plus creativity creates possibility, to create experiences for our audience. And I can give you several examples of what that looks like. I have a client who owns a shop, And so you all know during shelter in place, there was no permissions to open shops. But for her, this is her sole, this is her income. This is her business. And so many business owners went through that. How am I supposed to be viable as a business if I'm not allowed to be open? And even after they were allowed to be opened, you understand how severe this impact is to business owners, because you can't recoup from or recover the lost cost. So understanding that this pressure invites you to be a little bit more creative, to create better possibilities for your audience to connect with you. It was all about creating the experiences. So she created a gift box, right? The monthly subscription box, where it was very affordable, packed with tons of goodies, where she was, that were all from her shop, where she was able to create an experience for her customer. She has pickup parties that are socially distanced. She has all kinds of ways to be connected with her audience. Organizations who are sending out, care packets or experience packets for their members, to just say, hey, we're here. We know you are going through this right along with us. We're gonna get through this. We see you. That kind of an approach seems to be working really, really well. In fact, the next economy growth that is predicted, and there is economic growth predicted, believe it or not, I mean, it's always just like, what? Really? Yes, it is. It's actually called the experience economy. So the next wave of economic activity is around creating experiences. There's somebody in the chat that said something. Yes. Oh, this is great. I found that planning for something good, like a family reunion in a year or 2 years, has helped me personally. This could apply to marketing as well. Planning experience for your customers and with coworkers. Yes. Anytime you can have human-to-human interaction, take the opportunity. I know Zoom fatigue is a thing, but listen, it's what you've got right now. It is what you've got. So take advantage of that, because the people that you are connecting with are going to be really grateful for that connection, and they're going to remember that connection. A card, a letter, a text message, any kind of digital or old-fashioned sort of connection is part of creating that experience. Experience is really interesting. You can't create experiences with complete strangers. I mean, I guess you can. I come from, when I was in high school, we went to techno raves, and that was the thing. And you could have an awesome experience with 30,000 complete strangers. But we were all there on the same mission to just be, that's beside the point, to have fun. So you most likely are not able to create an experience with complete strangers. So stay in touch with your audience. And to the point of planning for the future, that is again that thing, that arrow, right? You're thinking of the strategy, you have a goal in mind, and then you're adjusting your tactics as you are going towards your goal.
So we have a couple questions. One is, which goes kind of into that. What's the most effective way to maintain relationships virtually, in your opinion?
I love that question. Okay, so there's a couple of ways I want to say that. So in a virtual world, I think we have 3.6 billion users on our social media, on various social media platforms. So I'm a teeny microbe in a big ocean. But it is really important to stay connected with your social media audience, and to add value to them. And that value looks differently almost every single day, but again has that goal in mind of why are you connected. So having a clear value proposition in your business is such a guiding principle, right? So why are you in business? Literally, that's Simon Sinek. Name your why. That is part of what I would use to stay present with, and do use to stay present with my social media audience. because social proof is a thing. People come to your social media, even if they don't hire you because of your social media, they come to your social media to almost like vet you, to kind of see, what's she up to? What is he doing? What is he into? And that kind of thing is really important to maintain. I think that finding a consistent way to stay connected. So I communicate on LinkedIn Messenger professionally. I communicate less on Facebook Messenger, but I use LinkedIn Messenger to direct messages, to stay in touch with people, to ask them how they're doing, to ask them how I can support them. I recently learned this from from a coach, from another professional development sort of guru in my life. And he says, how can I help you? How can I support you be even better, even more successful? That word, really, really, I love that approach very much, because it's assuming that you're doing well, even if you're struggling. And so that is how I use social media. Stay relevant. Stay relevant doesn't mean you stay cute and hip. Stay relevant means you stay true to your value proposition. You communicate continually. Don't get discouraged if people don't connect with you and your audience doesn't grow. Stay connected with them because they'll remember that, and remind yourself you're on social media to give value. So that's digitally. And then the other way is I personally think that hybrid digital experiences are the way of the future for networkers and marketers. And so I believe in that. And I've created a social media digital hybrid platform where there's digital and in-person experiences for professionals, because I think that is the way of the future for networking. I love that comment. Make 6 to 10 minutes call per day to connect with people and see how you can help them. Yes, just one person or two people. Don't even overwhelm yourself with anything, but I love that suggestion. A few minutes every single day. And following up with people that you've had a conversation with. It is so great to, sometimes at the end of the evening, at the end of the day in the evening, I'll send a message to every single person I talked to that day. Thank you so much for our conversation. I really enjoyed that. Thank you for thinking of me. It made me feel really special. Those are the kinds of things that add that extra certain je ne sais quoi to the relationship and makes you memorable.
And then the other question we have in here is, how do you market in these times without sounding cliche, or in other words, how do you sound authentic without using the pandemic as a crutch when it seems to be the topic of everything right now?
Yeah. So, I get asked to speak on the crisis and the pandemic and all of that, and the shift and the pivot a lot. And it's my pleasure to do that. I really love the conversation. But to your point of the question, and even, you mentioned, Sarah, I don't like that word anymore. It's, there's other things going on, right? The pandemic is an important conversation, but there's other things going on. So if at all possible, ask a leading question that is about something else, right? And I'll just share this with you. I had a conversation about 2 weeks ago with a professional who asked me, I had posted something on social media about making dinner. I don't typically share that I make dinner because it's not relevant to my brand, and it's not actually anything to do with my value proposition. But I had shared that I was making dinner because I do love the humans I live with and I get to provide for them. And the next thing I know is that I had this person I haven't talked to in a long while, which is part of a network that I'm in, Sonoma County Professional Women. And she asked me, she says, "Hey, I'm curious, where do you get your recipe inspirations?" And I thought, well, that's a good question, right? So that was one way that she reached out to me that really had nothing to do with the pandemic, had nothing to do with the crisis, and just got me engaged in a conversation. So ask a leading question, think of something outside of the box. If you're a marketer, ask your client, How are your clients responding to your offerings at this time? Have you seen your social media engagement increase or decrease? Have you thought about, like ask them a question and then engage them on that level? This word that I want to share with you, it's really important to show that you care, right? And showing that you care has very little to do, in my opinion, with commiserating, right? Showing care is not the same as commiserating. And so when you show care, this is an acronym that I try to remember. It's creative approaches to relationships and empathy. That's really how I want you to think about care. What are some creative approaches to relationships and empathy that you can take? Use the relatable pressures in your lives, yes, to be intensely human to your prospects, but also think outside of the box. People want to know that we're in this together and we've got this, but they also want to know that there's more. Again, with that light at the end of the tunnel, as cliche as that might be, being able to provide assurance. This reminds me of my youngest, or actually my oldest daughter when she was young, is what I meant to say. She's about to turn 21 years old, which is fine. We are fine. Everybody's fine. And that's what I tell myself every single day. And when she was little, she had some sensory processing challenges. And so it made things really challenging for her on a daily basis. And I remember when she was very little, going through the car wash was an act of impossibility. I was a single mom at the time, and it often presented itself with challenges, having to run daily chores and having to do daily activities. Often she was with me. She was like 2 years old. And I remember when she would see that we would start getting into a car wash, I tried to make it fun, but she would just have a meltdown. I knew that we were going to get through the car wash just fine. I felt like I knew there was a light at the end of the tunnel, but she didn't. So if you want to care, that's part of that experience that you're creating. Show that empathy and show that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You're gonna get through it. We're going to be okay. But it does feel kind of scary. This is really a lot right now. Thankfully, now, and actually not just at 21, in her teenage years, took a long time. She was able to get through a car wash, but it took that long. And for those many years, for her, that was crisis 911. For me, it was an opportunity that if we had to go through the car wash together, please read that as a metaphor as well, because there's many things like that were not as preventable as a car wash, that it was my opportunity and my responsibility to help guide her through. So care shows up with creative approaches to the relationship and to the empathy that you can show. Share your experience, share about who you are, what you are experiencing, and how you are balancing your business and life right now. Be authentic, right? If you're going through something with your family or your kids or your team, be authentic with that. You don't have to share all of the details, but it's okay to say, I have a low-key panic attack every time I hear my kids on a Zoom call, because I think it's my Zoom that just went up and I'm not ready for the meeting. So, that's just sort of like something that I never thought that was going to be a trigger for me, but it is certainly now. So,
well, I think that's a great point of relating with your customers and clients and having much more authentic and human. I mean, we've talked about authenticity for years now in marketing.
mm-hmm.
Having a much more human, relatable conversation with them where you're not just talking about business, maybe just asking, how are you? How are you really?
Mm-hmm.
And then helping them feel heard so that you can get them back on track or keep them on track for the marketing services you're offering the business owner. I think that's a really great approach.
I think yes. And you know what, as you framed it that way, the other thing I want to really share with you all, and in my business as a strategist, this is really important. Gosh, I can't even, and this is, we're deep in the weeds now, but that's okay. We still know where our goal is. We're going to get out of this together. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but I want to share with you, it's really important to set the expectations. When you and I find ourselves in a time of pressure, one of the things that we don't want to do is we don't want to add more stress to people, right? We just don't, we want to be good. We want to be good. And so trust me when I tell you that you can be good and set the expectation. And a lot of times your clients are going to need to have help with the expectations they have at the moment. Because one of the other things that is happening during these times, particularly for smaller businesses, in my experience, I would love to hear your challenges in that, but smaller businesses have really much more than I have observed in the past, started comparing themselves. So a lot of like, well, so-and-so is doing that and they're doing this. And so they're wanting to try a whole lot of things. If they're willing to try things, they're wanting to try a whole lot of things really, really, really quickly. And that's just not the realistic expectation in marketing. In marketing, it's the long game that matters. It is very much about the relationship. So just like we were talking earlier about creating the experience, difficult to create an experience with strangers. So, you want to help them understand that they're in a long-term, it's a marathon. This is a long-term strategy. And so setting that expectation for them. And again, those tactics, those measurable incremental steps, and then markers. When we do this small task, you can expect these 4 things. When we were first discussing the content of this conversation here today, and then marketing this event, right? Setting really good expectations around, we'd love to have it shared X amount of times. Well, when we share it 4 times, please expect that, you're going to have 5 signups, not 500, because that's not realistic. Even though you've reached 500 people or 1,000 people. So I think setting those expectations is really, really, really important. And sometimes we shy away from that because we think we don't want to put more pressure onto our clients. The opposite is true.
So how do you think you can use your pressures as motivators to be more authentic with your audience coming into the next year, turn these pressures around into opportunities and positivities?
Yeah. So I think the pressure is almost like I think of a French coffee press, right? So it's a very in the moment situation where you're under it, you're in it. It's a swirl that you are engaged in, and so being creative in that and engaging that creative play is part of creating possibility. I want to answer this question with a story, and I hope that's okay. I remember when I was a very young girl. I was born in Romania, and we immigrated to Germany after the fall, and I was 11. But my mother had left Romania, fled the country, with the hopes that we would be able to follow. So if you know anything about communism was locked down, and you were under the pressures of economic pressures and the pressures of that government at the time. And so not only were we under those pressures, as a child, I didn't know any better. This was my reality, but I could sense that there was something wrong here, right? That there's something just not quite the same, or as it should be. And my mother had left. And then the Civil War broke out. So I was under the tutelage of my grandmother, the matriarch of the family. And I remember when the Civil War broke out, that we all felt very, very, very scared, that there was a lot of danger all around us and there was no safe space to go. And her whole approach to to her life and to taking care of us was to be incredibly savvy with every single thing she did. She was an entrepreneur under all definitions of that word. She had a market spot. She would go to market. She would be able to turn anything into anything else. It was awesome. So she took it upon herself during that time, during those pressures and the worries that she had for us and for us as a family and where our whole future was heading. She took it upon herself to make paper crepe or crepe paper flowers. So we were sitting in the den and we were making these flowers, and then she would pack them on her cart and take them to market. And every person, including my precious 9-year-old self, felt like this was ridiculous. Right? This was crazy. Why are we doing this? Why am I having to sit here with you and do this? I feel scared. I feel alone. I wish my mom was here. It was very, very, very hard. And other people asked her that same thing. She took those things to market and sold out. And the reason why she sold out is because even during pressures, people want to be served. They want to see beautiful things. They want to be understood. They want to feel like there is some light at the end of the tunnel, like there's something else possible here. And she became very well known for her paper crepe or crepe paper flowers. I always say that wrong. And it taught me such a profound lesson about what it is that anything that I go through, any pressures could teach me. And that is, there is a way for you and for me, for all of us, to find the silver lining, to find a pathway of communication, even if it seems ridiculous to everyone else. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. It does. Thank you.
Yeah. So let me catch back up where I was. So one of the things that I think marketers often catch a bit of flack for is what I'm just going to call, for lack of a better word, profiling, right? Understanding our audience. And I recently gave a talk to a group of women, and I shared this very statistic, and I immediately got a message that I am discriminating against older women. And the furthest thing could be from truth. It's not true at all, but I will share these statistics with you because it's really important for us to know who we're talking to. We are in a digital economy. This is not new to 2020. The digital economy started many, many years ago, and we've been engaging in it for quite some time. What drives the digital economy is content. You see this on massive levels with large brands, whether they're corporate conglomerate brands or individuals who've become a brand. The content is fueling their economy. So there are, like I mentioned, 3.6 billion users on social media worldwide. 90.4% of them are millennials. And I don't know the average age in this audience here, but I will tell you, I'm not a millennial. I wish I was for a number of reasons, but millennials is sort of like they've been dismissed for some time. Well, stay tuned. 77.5% of users are Generation Xers. 48.2% of users are baby boomers. The power buyers are what we call the TED Talk generation. Those 24, hold your comments, to 48-year-olds. That's who we're talking to. That's a really, really wide gap or wide range of people, but they're specific in that they are looking for that experience. They are deeply invested in relationships that are nurtured by constant communication. If you think that they're going to like everything you say, they're not. That they're going to share everything you say, they're not. But they are going to pay attention. Think of yourself, how you engage on social platforms, and ask yourself, how many times do you actually engage with something or like something or share something or comment something? But you're looking. So social proof and communication influences their purchase. the idea that we can stop communicating right now because there's pressures, or because 2020 has just kind of given us a run for our money, we don't know what 2021 is going to hold. Please don't get caught into that. Think of content as literally your next frontier. There's one valuable thing you can do every week and every month is have a content meeting. Talk about what it is you can do. As marketers, you know how quickly a month goes by. We just had that conversation in our team this morning. It's Thursday. If you haven't communicated twice this week at the very bare minimum with a client, oh my gosh, but you need that content planning. So think of it as a frontier and do create that content conversation.
So what new opportunities are you seeing that you want to engage in, or you think that business owners should engage in?
So I already mentioned one, and that is that hybrid networking space, right? You had mentioned a conversation, or in your opening remarks, you mentioned collab. I'm a huge fan of collab. The reason why I'm a huge fan of collab because it's that not only am I a patron of theirs, but also they're leading really, really well in our community, showing what it looks like to be generous, to be creative and pivot, right? And there's that word, but to make a shift, to try something new, go outside of the box and see what happens, what else is possible. And so, that is one thing we can do, right? Really thinking of, I love that. There's your link to Collab Connect. That's good marketing. I think they're a great example of what can be done really well. I think the hybrid networking opportunities is for me a next frontier. I think the telling story and telling story authentically and vulnerably is really important. Is that space of relatability. So the opportunities here are to be relatable by being authentic. And our complaints, and I'm so curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Truly, but you're a marketing group. I bet a year ago at this time, we were trying to overcome the shallowness of social media, the shallowness of marketing. Like everything was flat laid and awesome, and go-getters and throw confetti, and it was this unrealistic lifestyle expectation that was absolutely completely unattainable. And our clients and our brands and even ourselves, we were measuring ourselves up against that expectation. Look, I think that the story you're experiencing and the story you can tell on your client's behalf and tell their story on your behalf, on your brands, that is what's really powerful. I have clients who have paid attention more and more and more to their internal teams. Natalie mentioned to me in our conversation, she is really curious about understanding how, as a team member, can you participate in making shift and making change? Look, pay attention to your team. Create points of connectivity. Make connection your number one priority. And that's where that content frontier comes in as well. Content for the sake of connection. As a family, for me personally here, as a woman with people in my home, story time is the time where we really connect. We get back to just the basics. If you have a phone of any kind, I think all phones can do this. I have an iPhone, and I swear by my iPhone. It's my best friend. But memories, you guys, the memories of in your personal lives, connecting back to that's back to that question that we had earlier around belief, but also for your clients. Going back to what has really worked, going back to client testimonials, and using that to project forward. right? If you are, we had that comment about family reunions. Remember that wonderful family reunion we had? I'm really looking forward. Let's plan the one for 2021, right? Let's start thinking about that testimony that you had as a business owner or your client has had. We are so grateful that we got to serve you in this way. We are now serving you in these ways. That conversation continually. And on that note, I just want to say, as communicators, which is what marketers are, you sometimes feel like, I've used too many words. I've said this too many times. I'm sick of hearing myself. But your audience doesn't feel that way. Your audience is like, an unruly toddler on sugar. They don't forget that you asked them to put their shoes on. You have to do it at least 28 times before they hear you once. So don't fret in that. Don't feel like you can only say it one or two times.
So what are some simple strategies that can help people take action?
Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit, but it's really worth repeating. So the strategy, again, you remember this? A strategy is your plan, the tactics or the steps you are taking. And a strategy doesn't change as quickly as your tactics do, right? So your strategy is the plan, the tactic is the action you take. And so it's really important to understand your position in the market. If you are dealing with a client or you yourself have not really communicated in a while, or your audience has kind of disappeared, really important to do a reset, right? Understand where you are. A strategy for communication is, I very much believe this, and know you know this as well, and do this as well, is your social media strategy. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that you can't ignore any one of the platforms. I think that my experience with clients and brands is that they think they should only be on one or two platforms. Lots of my clients think they should be on LinkedIn and that's it. And I think that that's false. So educate your clients on what platforms are useful to them and help them understand that it's possible that they could be really successful on a platform that they might kind of dismiss at the moment, and help them understand why it's important to reach their audiences on those platforms. And so that's really the baseline. Another really important thing is understand your position, understand your capacity. So not just your personal capacity, but the capacity of your client. What is it, or your audience, right? So who, your client or your audience, respectively. If your client doesn't have the capacity that you wish for them to have, educate them up to what it is that they're wanting to achieve with a specific goal. So a strategy without goals it's impossible. You can't create a strategy without goals. And then to that, for earlier question around beliefs, don't be afraid to vision. Right? Don't be afraid to imagine, not wishful thinking, but imagine a good 2021. Maybe you don't know whether you're going to be able to go on vacation to Bali. I get that. Maybe if you would be able to go, you can't afford it. I get that too. But that is not what a vision is for, right? A vision is about infusing your future with possibility, with creative approaches for your life, your clients' lives, your team's life, what it is that you're doing. This idea that we can be better, even if we have had just such a hard time in the past. So one of the most important things for you to look at, and here's actually 5 things, right? So jot these down. What are the key components that I look at when I'm looking at a strategy are my aim. So my goal, where am I going? My unique offer. And now that may have changed. So my favorite example to use at this time is a restaurant. right? A restaurant used to serve us in this way, and now they're serving us in new ways, in creative ways. And we are adapting to that, and we are embracing that. So what is there a unique offer that arises or arose as a result of these pressures? Really important to evaluate that. And I give you the example of a client with the box. She created that box. That is her unique offer. Your skills and strengths. You cannot overemphasize skills and strengths. I remember when I introduced skills and strengths into my team, it almost had this effect of people saying, well, yeah, but I told you I'm not good at that. Oh, no. The reason why we have skills and strengths is so that we can use those skills and those strengths to leverage and maximize what we can actually do. And sometimes you're going to get to do something that you're not necessarily really good at. This is where team comes into play. If you are lucky to have a team, bring your team in and have that collaboration. A perfect example for a company is to recognize that you may have somebody who's really talented at creating digital assets for your social media campaign, for example. Reach out to somebody else if they are much better at writing copy. You could have two different types of people working on that collaboratively. That again is that making content your next frontier. That alone could be the goal, and the strategy to that is a weekly meeting. The tactic is to include the people who are graphically inclined and some who are better at writing copy. So you take your aim, pay attention to your unique offer, your skills and strengths. Fourth is consider your weaknesses. There's no shame in saying, I'm no good at that. And in fact, I find myself in deep troubled waters when my ego gets in the way and I can't admit to the fact that I'm not good at that. I don't understand that your weaknesses don't take away from your strengths. Emphasize your strengths, work in your strength, and allow your weaknesses to be acknowledged and to be literally outsourced to somebody else who has that strength that presents as a weakness to you. Pay attention to your competitors. I call them my friends because my competitors are people I can learn from. We're here in a network of people who do very similar things. We are competitors, but understanding one another and understanding what we're bringing to the table uniquely is allowing us to actually have that sort of abundance mindset and know exactly when to refer out when something is actually bumping into our weaknesses. And who you're talking to and why they should care is part of your strategy. Who you're talking to and why they should care. That's the problem you're solving. And I know you all know this because I know this, and it's so much easier to do it for other people than it is to do it for ourselves. So my hope in this is that you would have the encouragement and the reminder to pay attention to this for yourself in your own business or in your own career. Are there any questions? I want to pause for that. I can't hear you, Sarah, if you're talking to me.
Sorry, muted myself. I don't see any questions at this time, but I think that's a great point is, keep moving forward and making sure that you play to your strengths. And I know as entrepreneurs, our egos do get in the way of not being great outsourcers or delegators is the word I'm looking for. That it's a great opportunity right now. There are certain tasks that I've learned that I always begrudge doing them. And you just have to get to the point to outsource them, put your efforts towards your strengths, and you'll be that much stronger as a business owner, as a marketer. I think that's a really great point is, recognize what you don't like doing and ask somebody else to do it for you.
Yeah. Yes. I need to hear that, and I joke about this often. It's like when we it's not in a funny way, but it's so true. When we present or when we prepare these presentations and these talks and interactions with other people, it's so humbling to see how much I need to hear my own information, right? That even when you are an expert in a certain field, the capacity for growth is still there. And you know, I just want that to be an encouragement to you, to be able to admit when something is not going well, or when you are at your limit, or when, you know what, when you've pulled over in the tunnel and you're throwing yourself a pity party. There's no shame in that. That's why I think that honesty is really important. I think that in this time, and really in all times, at all times, as marketers, we communicate with our audience. It's important to stay connected in new and interesting ways. And sometimes those new and interesting ways are just consistent ways, just consistently showing up. And making it memorable doesn't mean that you're always throwing a party with fireworks, or that you're always having the most perfect piece of content. It's really about reminding yourself of that value proposition, and then reminding yourself of the power of effective follow-up. I was talking to a client in real estate who said to me, I cannot understand why people who think of themselves as influencers would not respond to a comment on social media. Oh my gosh, because that follow-up is so much more effective. And she was talking about a specific person, and she has that sort of that you know, that ugly taste in her mouth. And so remember that follow through and follow up is really important. And here's a positive spin. I really want to share this with you, because this is something that to me is fundamentally true. Right? So fundamentally true for me, a core belief of in my own personal life and with every single person that I encounter. I am bonkers crazy about business. And that is because I believe that work is a force for good. I really believe that your work is an essential part of contributing and making this community better. And that is how I want to approach every single thing. So if anything goes wrong, or if anything is pressure, or if anything feels like I feel stuck, I don't know what to do, remembering that the work that I am doing and why I'm doing that work is a force for good. And I believe the same is true for every single individual. So seeking joy and positivity isn't Pollyanna. It is being empathetic with the hard things. It's resonating with those, but finding a way through, seeing a way through the tunnel. I know that it's so important to help people think outside of the box, right? One of my favorite things that has happened to me during shelter in place is that I was able to reconnect to basic storytelling. I love reading and I love spending time reading, but I didn't have the bandwidth. I didn't have the emotional and the time capacity to do this. And so I reconnected with children's books, my children's books. And I was recalling and remembering a time when I used children's books in a conference room with my clients to break through a certain barrier. You may find yourself sending somebody a children's book and allowing them to learn a new perspective. It doesn't have to be a marketing piece, right? It can be anything. On a personal level, I want to share with you that one of the most humbling things that have happened in terms of learning is that a friend had sent me some books that were geared to children to teach them about diversity in our country. And as a foreigner to this country, I didn't have that knowledge, part of my history learning and all that. And so it was really humbling to read children's books on the importance of Black Lives Matter. And so, you know, it's anything like that that can help you think outside of the box, help your clients think outside of the box. I've used the Giving Tree as a business book. If you ever want a good, solid book recommendation, there you go. one of the things that I get asked often is what kinds of tools I use. And I don't want to skip over that. I'm just going to go through them, and I'm happy to, you know, we're wrapping up here quickly, but I want to tell you I use Hootsuite. I don't know why people love to know that, but it's really important to a lot of people to know what kinds of tools I use. To be honest, I would love to know what kinds of tools you use. But Hootsuite, Canva, I'm a huge fan of QR codes, mostly because I'm a European. QR codes used to be a thing, and then we first took them, and Europe brought them back, and I'm just like, all power to those guys over there. QR codes are huge in Europe. And the other tool that I use is the Be Better platform, which is that hybrid networking space for connection, development, and impact. So use strategy to inform your 2021. Get yourself messy with it. Know that being strategic is a practice. This is not about you being perfect at it. You know, I call myself a strategist, and I never, ever, ever cease to be amazed at the fact that I am still learning and continuing to learn strategy. And so when you use strategy to inform your year, your next year, the 2021 season, it can be your best bud, right? It can be a good friend because it's very forgiving. And the reason, the way I want you to think of it is, think of a piece of paper and 4 squares. Top left square is your potential. You have so much potential, but if you don't act on the potential, it's completely wasted. So potential does require action. So you have potential, then you make a decision. So you have potential, decision. And when you take a decision, you take action, and you experience a direct result. Even if it's not the result you wanted to experience, even if it's not the result you expected to experience, there is a result. We know this from physics. That's all I know about physics, but we know this from physics. There's a decision, then there's an action, and there's a result. And then that result creates an impact. When you look at that impact, you evaluate it. You evaluate, did that work? How did that make me feel? How did that actually, what kind of a results and impact did that create? And then that creates new potential. So in strategy, you're constantly actively engaged, because as you are strategic and you're taking steps, your tactics are going to inform what the next good decision is. Really important to remember that.
Yeah, I think strategy, you still need to have it, but going into it knowing, especially with how unknown things are going to be for 2021, is knowing that it's flexible and it's not set in stone. And keep in mind that you should, you know, I love it. You're like, don't set it and forget it. Strategy, it's especially when it's digital, like God only knows what Google's going to roll out in 3-6 months. That could totally alter your strategy. Same with Facebook. But it's good to have the strategy so you have something to fall back on. But be open to altering it, and it's okay if you have to alter it. That's part of the game.
Yeah, and remember that we're saying the strategy is flexible, but what we're meaning by that is that the actions you're taking within that strategy is what's flexible. So if Google changes something, and God knows what they're going to do, like you said, or Facebook suddenly, you know, completely ignores you like they like to do, and you no longer exist at the all, they send you like that little obituary, and that's what you get because you're dead on Facebook. Get it? I get it. But that's not your whole strategy. It's a tactic, right? So now you're changing your tactic because you're responsive, because you're actively engaged, because you believe that the work that you're doing is relevant and important, because you connected it to your value proposition. And there's this really important part to remember, that will increase the pressure on your ability to market, and that pressure is going to invite more creativity, and that is going to equate to more possibility. So I don't want you to tempt fate. I don't want you to roll up your sleeves and go, come at me, Google, because we don't need more challenges than we have. But I want you to remember, if the pressure increases, so does your ability to be creative. And when you do that, when you add those two things together, you are going to have more possibility.
Perfect. So we've got a couple minutes left.
Yes.
Thank you so much for such a great presentation. Are there any last minute questions from our participants? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Or to get me on social media. I'll answer your questions.
You can definitely reach out to us at a later date. You can find Bianca. I know you can find her on email, Instagram at instagram.com/Bianca Broos. Facebook is Bianca Broos Company, and LinkedIn is Bianca Broos. So you can reach out to her at any of the social media platforms. You can always reach out to us at PMG, info@pmgnorthbay.org, or find us on, we're primarily on Facebook. We are a volunteer organization. We have a Facebook group and page, so reach out to us if you have additional questions. Again, I want to thank you so much, Bianca. There's a wonderful presentation. I appreciate you joining us and helping our marketers and business owners and members navigate the change from 2020 into 2021 and how to turn it into a positive, more strategic strategy going into next year. Thank you again, and thank you everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your week. And
thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.